right. I changed the music up. That was fun, huh, Chuck?
That was cool. I like that.
Well, welcome
I like
everybody
that.
to another episode of Rubbing Elbows. We are live today. We have a nice treat for you all. As usual, we will begin with some hot deals of the week. So we got a new segment. We're calling it Chuck's Off Market Deals of the Week. Here we go. All right, Chuck. So, by the way, before you get started with that, just to remind everyone, if you're watching on YouTube, on Facebook, doesn't really matter where you are, you can live chat with us. If you have any comments, let us know. We'll throw them on the screen like LA Fixers right there. So, hope to get some questions today throughout the show. So,
Yeah,
Chuck, what do we have?
actually, I was going to say that our community is based on popularity sometimes. And just like listings, the more exposure you get, the better. So I felt like, we talked about this before. For people anyone watching this who wants to, get a quick shout out and, tell people tell us what you do. Tell us why people should work with you. Tell us your highlights, your good stuff, and, Leo will read it out loud live and, get you a little bit out there. So first off market opportunity is in Chatsworth. And I know what you're thinking, Chatsworth, some of you guys might be in North Valley, but we're here in Studio City, Sherman Oaks. A lot of the builders and developers, investors, they love this area. But Chatsworth, believe it or not, there's properties there that are selling for $3-4 million. Okay, these are the big properties, couple of acre lots, with views. I happen to have one of those. Okay, I have a 2-acre lot with amazing views of the valley. Like you see the whole valley, 180-degree heads-on views, and you can pick it up for $799. Okay, 2 acres. It comes RTI for 8,200 square feet, 6,200 square foot home, another 2,000 square foot guest house, own private road, a whole situation, and your exit there is about $4 million.
Now, I just want to highlight something you said, and I hear these deals just like the rest of you for the first time because they are hot deals, right? They just come, so we don't get to talk about this ahead of time. But he says RTI. RTI, for those who don't know, ready to issue, meaning that everything's approved with the city. Nowadays, that is a nightmare. Just getting the permits approved can take forever. So there's huge value in purchasing a property that is RTI, and that means it's shovel ready. You buy the property, you close escrow, and you can go and start building the next day, literally. So just wanted to point that out because you mentioned RTI, and a lot of people sometimes miss that.
Yeah, RTI is ready to issue, and it's fully approved. And there's tremendous value in RTI, especially now. If you buy a piece of land and you want to get it entitled for whatever it is that you want to get it entitled for, you want to build a new house, you want to build multifamily, whatever you want to do, instead of it taking 9 months to a year, it might take you close to 2 years. One, the city is backed up. A lot of the clerk and the people that work for building and safety are working from home, and it just makes things a lot more difficult. So it's tremendous value in being able to skip that wait time. Okay, so yes, fully approved RTI, 8,200 square foot. It'll probably cost $1.5 million to build this thing, plus another 800,000 to buy it. You can sell it for $3.5 to $4 million. There's definitely money, and it'll be a trophy property.
All right, where can we get more info? LAFixers.com?
LAFixers.com. There's more info there. The address is there. Yeah, don't put that on the screen just yet. Oh, actually, don't put it on the screen. Let's have everybody go there. That way you can deal with that separately.
Okay.
Next property. Some of you guys know the term REO. Some of you guys don't. REO is a bank-owned property, bank-owned asset. Someone lost a property to the bank. They got foreclosed on. They lost a property to the bank. This is a property in the Royal Oaks neighborhood, which is the best of the best in Encino. That's where a lot of these $14, $16 million homes are selling. This house will be able to sell for 3.3 to 4.3 million, depending on how you do and what you do. Right now, it's a 3,100 square foot fixer, just fixer, heavy fixer. And if you go to lafixers.com, I can send you links for the video of what the interior looks like. You pick it up for $1,650,000. Okay. You drop another $500,000 into it. Just bring it back to life, renovate it. It needs everything. And then put it on the market for 3.3, 3.4, depending how quickly you can get the project done.
Yeah, huge margins on that.
Yeah, huge margin.
And I want to also remind everybody again that these are not just off market or listed deals. These are already assigned and they're locked in escrow. Chuck has access to these deals. He controls them. Nobody else can get them right now. So if it's something that you're interested in, you don't have to deal with all of the back and forth negotiations. You just decide it's a deal for you. Chuck assigns it to you in escrow, and it's yours.
Yeah.
All right. Should we jump into our treat of the day, or do you have another one?
Actually, I have two more.
Okay.
I've got a project in North Hollywood to build 29 units.
Okay.
It's also off market. You can pick it up for 2.75. Okay. And it's RTI. It's fully approved. You're getting it for less than $100 a door. Reach out to me on that one. I've got the plans for that. I've got everything for that, lafixers.com. And the final one, this is a buy and hold play. This is for somebody who wants to, purchase a property in a prime location and just hang on to it, flip the tenants, get them in, get, better tenants. This is in Culver City. It's on Culver Boulevard. It's 2 side-by-side duplexes. And you can pick it up for about $1,950,000, just under $2 million, $1 million each for 2 duplexes. You're getting each duplex for $1 million. So that's great. That's a great
awesome
out there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. So I know that we were able to get our special guest today on last, short notice. So we didn't advertise like we usually do weeks in advance, only a couple days. But everybody's in for a special treat today. We were able to get Bruce Mack on short notice. He's created, and he'll explain this better than I will, but he's created this trust that somehow circumnavigates the Proposition 19 issues that we all have been faced with taxes. Bruce is one of the nation's top authorities on trusts. He's a licensed financial advisor, speaker, and a successful real estate investor and author. So let's bring him on. Bruce, are you with us? There you are.
I am. How you doing?
All right. Very good. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure.
So, Bruce, before we get into the trust and what you've done and, the whole story here, why don't you tell us your story, your journey, how you got into this and how you created your company?
Well, many years ago, I became a licensed financial advisor, and many years ago, I became a real estate investor. Actually, when I was living in the Vegas Metroplex area, I bought, rehabbed, and flipped 160 properties in a 3-year period of time and made millions of dollars. But I also, because at that particular point, I really didn't know anything about our trust, I had to pay out millions of dollars in capital gains on those properties when I flipped them. I was always in quest of a better solution, a better way to go. I was always in quest of asset protection because, unfortunately, though I did 160 plus transactions, I will say there were a couple of lumpy and bumpy scenarios with ex-owners because I was working in a highly contested area, which was working with pre-foreclosure clients. We did equity splits, and every once in a while we had issues. And if I only knew then what I knew now, or what I know now, it would have been a completely different picture from both a taxation and from an asset protection standpoint. The short and long of it is, I lost $175,000 on one deal alone.
Ouch.
It was a real huge bee sting, if you will. And it was because I did not have my trust. And yes, I was sued. And yes, it was frivolous. And yes, it was scary. And yes, it could be you as well as it was me. And these are the types of things that, as fellow real estate investors, we're faced with every day. We do have a big target painted on our backs because we are very visible. And if you think for 1 second that an LLC is going to protect you, well, we'll talk about that and how you can truly get asset protection. But my story is I was very blessed, and I was able to hook up with a law firm that we worked an agreement with, and we have this wonderful trust that has been around for decades that truly is a panacea. And as you'll be hearing over the next few minutes, it is revolutionary as to what it can do for you and what it's done for me as a fellow investor.
Yeah, so let's jump into that, because we're all familiar with trusts, right? Living trust helps protect either your heirs or yourself if you're doing investments. How is your trust different from a living trust?
Well, living trusts were created for two reasons, and they work very successfully for those two reasons. One, they were created with the ability to avoid probate. Probate can be very expensive if you die without having a proper trust. I've seen in cases where 50% of the estate goes to paying probate fees, especially if it's a contested probate. So that's a good thing, that they do prevent against probate issues. And secondly, living trusts were created with the idea in mind that they can and do appoint and spell out who the beneficiaries are. Other than that, that's where living trusts start. And that's really where our trust picks up, because not only do we also incorporate all of the aspects of a living trust, but we do much, much more. The other things that our trust does is it insulates and provides absolute asset protection for the owner of the trust. Now, people think that a C&S or an LLC is a protective mechanism. Unfortunately, it's not. I've seen, excuse me, somehow that didn't get turned off, but it is now. Unfortunately, LLCs can be pierced very easily using alter ego. And we've seen where 40+% of the time it's successful when alleged alter ego, which means that as a member managed LLC, which is how real estate investors operate, or a partnership, they can lose the corporate veil. Contents can be gotten out of that LLC. And with reverse piercing, which is something that most people are not aware of, other LLCs can be attacked, addressed, and also wiped out. So asset protection is one of the things that our proprietary copyrighted trust provides that a living trust is not. Secondly, huge tax mitigation benefits for real estate investors. Instead of utilizing depreciation tables of 27 and a half years, superior to that, 100% of all lease and rental income, excuse me, pursuant to the trust, becomes deferred in perpetuity from a taxation standpoint, which is huge. Secondly, all capital gains become excluded when the property is conveyed and sold to the trust, which is done at basis or book value. Then the client, when they have their capital gains, when they do their sale, their capital gains that they would normally incur is completely eliminated because they have one of our proprietary copyrighted trusts. And California, when you bought a house at 500,000 and you sold it for $1.5 million, and you have a huge capital gains consequence, this could be absolutely huge for our investors and our investor base. Back to you.
Yeah.
Are you saying that clients can defer all their rental income taxes?
All 100% of lease and rental income becomes deferred in perpetuity, because the deferral in perpetuity is the time frame when the trust distributes. The taxes do not become due until the trust distributes, and the trust distributes again in concert with the laws of perpetuity, which so state that the last of the heirs of the last of the sole surviving beneficiaries, they expire, they pass away. Then 21 years elapses, and at the end of the 21st year, the trust has an automatic distribution provision. But when we look at this, we see that this is truly a multi-generational trust by design. It has a dynasty trust provision, and this is meant to distribute after everyone that was either directly or indirectly related to the trust. They have passed away, so there's no one that incurs the potential or existing tax liability at the time of distribution. Heck, this could be 100, 200, 300 or more years from now when the trust distribution provision kicks in.
That's a
There's a
beautiful loophole.
It's huge. It's
it's
absolutely huge.
It's definitely, when you know how to work the system, quote unquote, then you start benefiting from all these, extra savings on taxes and things that you mentioned. Now, Danielle Nissim, she had a question because you mentioned something earlier, and I think it sparked a little concern question. So even if I have my property on a trust, I can still be sued, she's asking.
Anybody can be sued for anything, and that's a great question. But there's an if, a but, and let's discuss the howevers. Because of this type of trust that we have, anybody again can be sued, but because it's a contractual, specialized type of a contractual trust, not a statutory trust, the case actually has to be thrown out of court and can't even be heard. The only time that case could be heard is in the event that they could not only allege, but prove fraudulent conveyance. Now, an example of fraudulent conveyance is when somebody was in a lawsuit previously, and then they found out about one of our type of proprietary copyrighted trusts, and they decided to get our trust because they heard what a great asset protection mechanism it is. And at that particular point, the litigator could cry foul and unwind the trust to be able to get at the assets, because that would be a fraudulent conveyance. Frankly, if that was the case, we won't take a client on at that time, or we will exclude any assets in question if there is a suit, and we will keep them out of the trust. So other than that, that's the only time that you can get into a trust for trying to execute a either lien, levy, or judgment. In fact, the only thing that is left that is at exposure, because all assets are sold at book or basis to the trust, though you have access to them for use and so on and so forth. But the only thing that can be exposed would be what we call a user account for your personal food, fun, and fashion, where you're generally going to keep $2,500, $3,000, which, of course, if you were sued, then you would disclose that as your only asset, because it will be your only asset, which is a great thing, so that you're only at risk for that amount that you have in that personal checking account.
Got it. So, one thing that's typically looked at when you're investing is moving your profits from one property to another, also known as 1031 exchange.
Oh, yeah.
So can you explain the difference between a 1031 exchange and how the trust works in comparison?
Absolutely. In a short word, we're the anti-1031 exchange solution. And we actually have 1031 exchange facilitators that refer us clients because it's a much better mechanism. So let's talk about a 1031 exchange briefly. In a 1031 exchange, you've got 45 days to identify, 180 days to execute on a contract. And if you don't, then you automatically incur the capital gains from the previous property. Many people get under contract and they find that the property has problems and, massive repair, black mold, this, that, whatever. And they try and get it worked out with the seller, but the seller is not flexible. So the deal falls out of escrow. And sometimes, all too often, I've seen deals not be able to be consummated because they couldn't find a replacement property within that 45-day period of time. So they end up incurring the entire capital gains that they were trying to avoid and kick that tax can down the road for a period of time. So that's a bummer. Also, should they elect to sell that 1031 exchange, even with a successful 1031 exchange that they've done in hand, the problem that we see is that then paying not only the taxes on the last property, but the prior property that's been rolled forward. And if we believe that taxes are going to be higher in the future than they are today, and I'll raise my hand, I'm a believer, then what we're really saying is maybe this wasn't such a good solution to be able to get a forestallment on the taxes and rolling it forward, because we're going to be hit with an even bigger tax bill. Now, unlike any of that, with our proprietary copyrighted trust, when a client uses our trust and they sell their property, 100% of all capital gains pursuant to 643A3 of the IRC, that's the Internal Revenue Code, they are excluded when that money goes right back into the trust, which is exactly where it goes. It becomes reclassified as an ordinary dividend, and therefore, just like lease and rental income, it becomes deferred in perpetuity, which is a wonderful thing for our investors.
That sounds amazing. I have a question. It really sounds fantastic. We're going to get into some questions on how some of our viewers can roll, get together with you on this stuff. But
sure,
can this trust help investors with the new Proposition 19 with the reassessment issues?
Oh, that's a great question. I have spoken to many of the local associations, the AOA, AGLA, Apartment Owners Association, and the and such. And this became a really heated issue where people were actually having their kids. They were selling their houses on paper to their kids and putting them on, transferring the deeds to them prior to February 15th. Highly problematic. What if the kids have a drinking or a drug problem? What if the kids have a falling out with the parents? I mean, this leaves the potential for the kids to actually either lose the house through a lien, a levy, or a judgment, and or if they fall out of sorts with mom and dad, to put mom and dad out on the street. Not a good thing. But after February 15th, the problem is, if you want to convey when you pass away in your will, if you want to have your children pick up the properties, the unfortunate reality is that's going to reset the clock, and you're going to have to suffer through a reassessment. Well, if the house is picked up $1 million worth of equity, and this depends where you are in LA County, it's usually about a 1.25% reassessment. So for every $1 million worth of reassessment, and let's just say it's $1 million, that's an additional $12,500 per year. And if somebody has multiple properties and they're passing them down to their kids, they're also passing down potentially a massive tax burden that the kids are going to have to absorb on an annualized basis. Well, simply, we have worked out a elegant way to do a circumnavigation. We've done it on a number of occasions, and utilizing our trust, we can maintain the beneficial interest, which is what needs to happen, the beneficial interest, and keep that going through so that the beneficiaries, i.e. the kids, can receive the properties and not have to endure and incur the reassessments when they take over the properties and they take over the estate of mom and dad.
Okay.
Sorry, Leo, one more question, a follow-up question to
Sure, of course.
so someone who's got multiple properties in an LLC, in a corporation under their own name, whatever it is, once they get your trust, they obviously with your instructions and guidance, they'd be moving all the properties, changing vesting to the trust. The trust would be owning the property, or would the trust be owning the new owner of the LLC?
Depending upon how we do the structure, either or. Generally speaking, we dispose of LLCs because they become superfluous. And if they're California properties, and or if the investor's situs, i.e. the investor lives in California, even if they're investing in Rust Belt properties, say in Michigan or what have you, they may not even be aware of it, but they are supposed to be filing a foreign filed entity, even though the property may be in Michigan, and entities in California can become quite costly, to the tune of $830 per entity. And then there's the necessity to file a return for each one of them. Returns for a LLC, somewhere between $750 to $1,500, depending upon who does the return. But for every entity, you can figure it's roughly about an $1,830 consequence on an annualized basis. So if you've got 10 properties and you're doing 10 returns and you've got 10 LLCs, that's $18,300 a year that you're paying in what I call garbage fees, unfortunately, to maintain those properties, all of which can be dissolved and gone away. And this is a huge savings that clients of ours are able to enjoy once they get a trust.
So, I have a million questions, obviously, and I'm sure everybody watching, we have more questions coming up, which I'll try to throw at least one more on here. But anytime you're an investor and you're making money, I'm a big believer of having experts around you. You're obviously an expert in this field. Can you tell us about your services? Do you charge for consultation if somebody wants to come and see if you are a good fit for their portfolio?
We absolutely do not charge for consultations.
Okay.
We do discovery calls all the time, and we even have currently enrolled IRS agents that are on our staff that do some of the discovery calls. And by the way, IRS enrolled agents are on the side of the consumer that advocate and know the rules of the road and these types of things. And what we want to do is sit down in a one-on-one environment, usually over the phone and or doing a video chat, because we're, of course, in a COVID environment where we can go through what the specifics of an individual is, kind of get a good idea from an overview what their framework is, what they're looking to accomplish, and see how we can help. And in not all cases are we a good fit. If the person does not have an appropriate some assets, then likely we're not going to be the right fit at this particular time. But more oft is the case, the client prospect is a very, very good fit for what we've got to offer because of the asset protection, as well as the tax mitigation, as well as the multi-generational wealth transference tool that is all encompassed in what our trust is all about.
So we have another question here. Looks like from YouTube. Landris is asking, California Prop 19 sponsored by CAR has stripped away from a lot of trust protections. How do we address that?
Well, you know what? That's a longer discussion. Let me suggest that we get on a consult and we can get into the specifics. And we have done it successfully. And again, the key is to keep the beneficial interest intact, which we do when we get a client a trust, so that they get the flow that is consistent with the county assessors, so that we are in total compliance and doing things the right way.
All right, we got another one here from Bonbon Electric. Can you elaborate on avoiding lease income taxes?
On avoiding
lease income taxes.
Okay, I think that they're really talking about a lease income, rental income.
Right.
The fact is, when you convey and sell an asset, your properties to the trust, and that's done again at book or basis, whether it's real property or personal property. So I call it, you put all your assets, your planes, your trains, your automobiles, your stamp collections, coin collections, crypto, whatever. It all goes into the trust. It all has a value. And you're going to be taking back a demand note for that. That's another discussion. But the short answer is, once the trust owns the assets, then the trust is going to be the collector of rents and or lease income. And pursuant to 643 of the IRC, because the rents and lease income are going to go into the trust and stay in the trust until the trust distributes that money, it does not trigger or create a taxable income or a taxable event, I should say. Now, the question that people oftentimes ask, sounds great, Bruce, money's going into the trust, but excuse me, that means I don't have access to the monies and I can't use it. Excuse me for one sec, guys.
Sure.
Let me take a little soda here. That's just not true. The fact is, anything and everything that an individual does in their personal and business life becomes a trust expensible activity instead of a taxable distribution, with three exceptions. Meaning, you can buy a car. It's going to be a trust car. You can buy an RV. You can buy a jet ski. You can buy properties. You can buy virtually anything and everything. And it is a viable trust expense. Medical expenses, viable trust expenses. Maintenance and support for beneficiaries, viable trust expenses. And the list goes on, and we can discuss this more on a one-on-one. But there's only three things that trigger what we call a taxable distributable event. And that's if the monies that is used from the lease and rental income for either the procurement of personal food, personal fun, or personal fashion. We call those the three F's. As long as it's not food, fun, or fashion, it's going to be a viable trust expense. So you can live your life and live your lifestyle utilizing those funds and utilizing the trust assets and having acquisition and control of those trust assets. It's the old Rockefeller principle that we've all heard about, being able to be lived out, where you own nothing, but better, you control everything.
So you're giving us a lot of really valuable information, and questions are flowing in. I got like 7 or 8 questions. We're not going to be able to get to all of them, unfortunately, because we are running out. But one user here on Facebook wants to know, what is the best way to get in touch with you, which I think is going to help all the other ones that have questions that have not been answered.
You might type this in. You can go to platinumtrustgroup.com. platinumtrustgroup.com, and then /, which is the keystroke that's right below the question mark on your keyboard, platinumtrustgroup.com /titanium. So it's platinumtrustgroup.com /titanium. I can also give you a phone number, which is 702-371-2345. Again, that phone number is 702-371-2345. But honestly, the best way is to go to platinumtrustgroup.com /titanium. That is a booking page, which will get you right on calendar. You put a couple things in, boom, you select the time that's convenient for you that we have availability. You will then get an hour blocked out so that we can sit on a one-on-one basis, talk about your specifics, and see how the trust might be the right solution for you.
Yep, and I got it up on the screen. So platinumtrustgroup.com /titanium.
Perfect.
702-371-2345. That's easy to remember. 12345 there at the end.
There you go.
Right. So Bruce, thank you very much for joining us. A lot of valuable information. Sorry to anybody that has questions. I see here Genesis and Landris and a couple other questions. Please get together with Bruce. He'll be able to get all those questions answered for you. For everybody else watching, thank you again for showing up every Thursday at 2:00. Hope to see you guys again next week, Thursday, 2:00. You can join us either on Facebook or YouTube. We're going to be adding LinkedIn very soon as a live stream. Chuck, any final words?
Yeah, I think we're going to be on Clubhouse next week.
All
You
right.
familiar with everybody? Well, Clubhouse is a new platform where basically it's live podcasts. So
It's even more interesting than that. I heard Elon Musk and Zuckerberg just went on Clubhouse, joined somebody's session, just started chatting, and that thing just blew up. So
yeah,
it's
incredible. All types of fun stuff on the internet. You just never know. I heard that Will Smith joined some Zoom session that he got invited to by accident, and they had a blast. So you never know. I wish we had that kind of.
We will. We have something lined up. We'll have somebody, maybe Will Smith, maybe somebody else, jump on one of these upcoming shows. Bruce, again, thank you very much for joining. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, you know how to reach us. See you guys again Thursday, 2:00 next week.
Bye, guys.